Epic politics, man. Wow, look at this. What a reference. The degausser with a old school reference for Michael Shure. He has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. He is the great Michael Shure, everybody.
I like how you said all the time. You should have said all the time you've taken me to lunch.
What did I say?
Times.
Oh, yeah.
You pluralized it.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I'll tell you something, just to pay you another compliment. Let me just blow a little more sunshine up your butt before we start this segment.
You're not going to write checks to me.
I told someone either yesterday or the day before that you may be like among the smartest, funniest people I've ever met. I want you to know that, sir.
You can only disappoint from here on out. So that's good.
Exactly. Well, that was it.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Yeah, let me finish. I said, so what a disappointment is what I said. Yeah, there you go. Now, can we start with something that I kind of promised the audience we would get to? And so I really just want to touch on it. And you can speak, I think, to the importance of this Arizona Senate seat. But there was a big, smartest guy we've ever met. Kim does the banners. And so she likes to, I think you maybe want to go to we can stop with the messing around with the banners. Let's just touch on what is going on at Mar-a-Lago this week. They had a huge fundraiser for Kari Lake, and they raised a lot of money for her. Now, this is the Senate race there. I'm wondering if you can speak first to the importance of that Senate seat. From what I understand, I mean, that seat really could be part of gaining control of the Senate for the GOP.
Yeah, there's a lot in play right now. I think that is the number one Senate seat in the eyes of both the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee. I think with good reason. Kristen Sinema is not going to be there. She turned into an independent. She was a thorn in the president's side. Ruben Gallego, the Democrat running for that seat, a war veteran, and going against Kari Lake, who is something of a folk hero, accidentally or otherwise, in the MAGA crowd. And a lot of people, when we talk, Mark, about the fact that when Donald Trump goes, so goes MAGA, well, not everybody is going to just lay down and allow that to happen. And Kari Lake is, curiously, but accurately, I guess, the person who would be a potential standard bearer for the MAGA group. And so when Trump is off the stage, which will happen eventually, I mean, with Donald Trump, it may not happen until he's 6 feet under, but he will not be as big a factor in the party in the same way that Reagan, that everybody goes, right? And who takes over that mantle? Well, Kari Lake is someone who's talked about, who speaks in the same way about the same issues with the same fire, but also has the charisma that's required. And so it's important on two levels. That's a really important Senate race for both parties. It really could decide control of the Senate. With even in Maryland, when you look at, Ben Cardin's retiring and that seat now being thrown into flux because Hogan is in the race. I mean, so it doesn't become a blue slam dunk anymore for the Democrats. And they have to pick something up, and that would be something. Now, this wouldn't even be a pickup because Sinema is a Democrat, but they certainly couldn't lose it, and they want somebody who would behave more like the Senate Democrats in unison.
You talk about Kari Lake's style, and I didn't even think of it in terms of what you just mentioned, which is sort of the next in line to be the smack-talking, take-on-the-media kind of MAGA person that will follow Donald Trump or even coexist with Donald Trump. She does really quack like a Trumpian sort of candidate and a political figure. As I say, really intense smack talk and not at all cowed by journalists. She was a former media star herself, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was a journalist. And so I think what's interesting too is that you see other figures in MAGA world, but just like you do in the Democratic Party, but not everybody is going to be Bill Clinton, right? Or Ronald Reagan of the Republican Party. But here's somebody who's not Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's not Lauren Boebert, who's not Ted Cruz, but here's somebody who can come out and be an every person to everyone under that umbrella. And I think that's what sets her apart, actually.
It is interesting. This is pointed out by shadow producer Calvin Wong. What's her past accomplishment? Being a TV reporter, not good enough. I don't know. Oddly, what resume you need to
Well,
be a
well,
public
that's just
servant?
it. You're
Yeah.
100% on. What is it? It doesn't matter. What was Donald Trump's? TV star, millionaire, failed billionaire. I don't know. He was a self promoter. She is a self promoter. She doesn't have the qualifications, but the crowd she's appealing to isn't looking for qualifications. She wants to say bad things about the other team in a way that makes her sellable to them. And that's all that really matters, if you can speak that language to the other side.
The There's so much sort of boiling over on Capitol Hill of funding for Ukraine, funding for Israel. There appear to be political considerations because we do talk politics with you just about both, so less to the essence of whether or not you should, and more to the where the Biden administration sits and how this is playing out politically for the GOP and for the Democrats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, with Ukraine, it's not clear how Mike Johnson's going to deal with this when they get back from the Easter break. I mean, there is no, there's no bill, there's no outline for a bill. You may not see a vote on this until late this month, if you see a vote on it at all. And I think that sets the Republicans up for a great deal of criticism from the other side. It's already coming out. That is coming out. The other thing, and we tend to forget this, is that when Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House, that means that he's not just speaking to members of the House. He's speaking to Europeans. He's speaking to people who are the decision makers in other countries that need the United States to act. So we think of him as this congressman from Louisiana, as we think of any member of Congress until they move up that ladder and are there for a good deal of time. But he's having conversations with the British Foreign Secretary now. He's talking to the former leaders of these countries, which he wouldn't have been doing before. And that information then has to get sort of distilled and shared with his caucus that he heads up in his day job. So there's a lot that goes into this, and it's a very, very difficult position for him if he gets nothing done.
This whole idea that the GOP leadership embattled in the House, and that the GOP House generally hasn't really done much. They've tried to impeach president. They still continue with trying to impeach Mayorkas, et cetera. This has a stink to it now that you think is palpable.
Yeah, I mean,
meaning voters respond to this. The fact that it, yeah.
What do you say? Which
Are
voters
are they a do nothing Congress? Might be a way to.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are, and I think voters are pretty set in the fact that Congress is always a do nothing Congress, right? They're an easy punching bag. Whether they have a 19% approval rate or a 31% approval rate, they're not at 57, right? So when you look at Congress as a do nothing entity, it's always going to hurt the people that are controlling Congress. And it's looked at now as Mike Johnson, he's the Speaker of the House, is controlling it, and he's controlling a caucus that is controlling Congress. So he becomes a Democratic punching bag for the party that thinks that they're not getting anything done. When they're in control, they're going to take those same punches as they always do.
So, I mean, in a way, you're saying nothing new to see here?
No, exactly. It's especially in an election year. Who do it's throw the bums out. I mean, that's how Donald Trump got elected, drain the swamp, essentially, right? I mean, so that's what Democrats have to bank on in terms of at least taking over the House and trying to hold the Senate, not to mention a big effort on the White House.
Now, let me swing back over to Israel for a second, just because you've got real shifts in the major political figures' view toward Israel. I mean, Biden's been a staunch supporter of Israel. His administration has as well. I think they feel an obligation to the only democracy in the region and a long-standing alliance, this kind of thing. They are now saying that they would shift their policy toward Israel if there isn't a shift on Israel's part toward the policy of the way they're prosecuting this war. When I say they, I'm really talking increasingly, and then I'll shut up here in a second, but I just want to kind of set the table because Benjamin Netanyahu is getting a tremendous amount of pushback in his own country. I mean, it's clear to many who look in that this guy, they're even pushing for an early election that would likely lead to his removal. This is the Israel of the body politic. So he's becoming more isolated as Netanyahu, even as Israel finds itself more isolated. There are a lot of pieces on this chessboard, Michael. How is it playing out in this country?
Yeah, it's very true. Look, I think what President Biden said this week, and in sharing those threats on the phone with Netanyahu, is unprecedented and historic. I think the president finds himself in a very damned if you do, damned if you don't, or found himself in that position, right? I mean, he kept supporting Israel early on and was criticized by the right and by many in the sort of active American Jewish political think tanks and political activists, Israel advocates from AIPAC, which is the American Israel Political Action Committee, which is a very strong voice here. He was criticized no matter what he did. There was not enough support that he was showing. Then he was criticized by the left, by his own party, by many progressives for siding with Israel too much. So he was in this zone where you just couldn't win, right? I think coming out and saying this, I don't think it's too late to do that for the president. I think it's something that he has to follow up with and continue saying. It can't just be a few words on a phone call right now, politically speaking, because there are a lot of Democrats, a lot of young Democrats, a lot of Muslim Democrats, a lot of people who are looking for a reason to support the president on this, but can't just stand with the sort of monolithic embrace that he has given to Israel constantly, which, by the way, U.S. presidents have always done. There are reasons for it, but it still is a big departure, and I think it could be historic.
Just ask you about something because you talk about, and I think about the Middle East and presidents and their general disposition historically to the region. Donald Trump had a very tight relationship with the Saudis. I think it was the first foreign trip he took was to Saudi Arabia, and Jared Kushner, of course, linked very closely to MBS. I'll remind everybody that MBS bragged that Jared Kushner was in his pocket. Those are the words he used. And the amount of money that Jared got post-administration to get his fund started, from a lot of it Saudi money, et cetera, all suggest this connection to the Saudis. Now, the Saudis have this private golf their league. It's a new golf league that they've set up. It's very high profile. And one of the crown jewels of the locations they play is the Trump resort. So I'm getting around to the fact that these things that would normally make you wonder, be scandalous. I mean, I always think about what would it be like if, Obama had this set up, or if a Biden had this set up. I mean, look at what they do with Hunter. They just they rotisserie Hunter, and maybe rightfully so for taking advantage of, as what you've pointed out, is sort of a nepo baby system. But I just sit back and I go, wow, it's extraordinary that this guy is still running for president, and he's clearly in bed with the Saudis for I don't know what numbers.
Right, but he also is doing it in a way where he's banking on those tight relationships. He's selling that. Those tight relationships are why I can bring peace to the Middle East. The Abraham Accords, which nobody can really talk about in great detail about what they've done, other than his supporters say, well, what about the Abraham Accords, right? As meaning that he is the person, and Jared Kushner as his emissary, the people that brought peace to the Middle East. Well, there's not peace in the Middle East, and the Abraham Accords had nothing to do with what's going on in that region right now. And so he sells that to his voters as something actionable, which he should do, by the way. I mean, he's running for president, and a tightness with one of the major players, if not the biggest player in that region, if he can get them to soften on Israel in some way, which he arguably did a little bit, then he's done something, and that's what he's selling. The flip side of that is there's no depth to it. There's nothing concrete about it. And in fact, the Saudis are not necessarily friends of the United States. All they want to do is sell oil, and the people who want drill baby drill are going against what the Saudis' motivation is for being a part of these conversations. So, or at least one of their motivations. It's a very complex thing. What I will say is that nobody's going to vote for or against Donald Trump because of his tightness with the Saudis. I mean, and if they do, it's a very, very small number of people that will be doing that. So it has a bigger effect of showing him as a world player when he was shunned by so many on the world stage, except for that area. And it has the effect also of Democrats being able to say that he's in bed with the Saudis. And that hasn't really worked, because so too were the Bushes. Two out, the 3 terms there, reelected. I would say that the Clinton and Obama were not dispassionate about keeping warm relations with the Saudis either. So it's kind of it can only help Trump, but only a little bit too.
Well, that states it so well and characterizes it so accurately. It's just so interesting to me as I think back on what you've just said to the beginning of the relationship with the Saudis. I mean, America's had a long-standing relationship with the Saudis, largely because of economic interests and oil interests that we have, right? Yeah. Energy interests. So you're so right about it.
Petroleum has dictated so much of who we are. I mean, look at Syria. There's no oil in Syria, and they are the shunned country in the Arab world, and we let civil war happen there and all those things happen because there's no oil. Nobody cares about Syria enough. But you get to these other countries that are oil rich, and the Emirates and Kuwait, and we go to war to protect Kuwait. I mean, those are the kinds of things that tell you that oil really dictates everything over there.
Yeah, just because you mentioned Syria, I mean, the Iran response to the Israeli bombing of Syria, that could be serious indeed. I mean, it might have been, a warranted strike on these Iranian leadership, but in Syria.
It's a great thing to remind people too, Mark, what you just did, because it also explains a little bit of what Biden is trying to do. Not only is he trying to echo the passions of so many Americans on what's going on in the Middle East with Israel and Gaza, but also to sort of calm the other players in the region, to let them know that, look, America's even criticizing Israel or saying you got to do better, and that's unusual, and that gets heard.
It is this is interesting from Tommy Guys here. That's all Saudi Arabia has is oil for revenue. Oh, I want to get that back up. No, I guess I can't get that back up there. Anyway, it was interesting, the comment.
I'm leaving the Mark Thompson show for a Saudi show that airs on Friday. So,
Luis. With a big shout out for Michael Shure.
Big shout out.
A huge soda of politics.
I need a screen cap of that. I need a screen cap right there. Yes.
That is really strong. Very good. You got a huge soda comment also I saw earlier, and you've made that achieve a higher altitude than ever before, Michael Shure. So bravo.
I mean, huge sodas everywhere. Very, very happy about it.
You can find Michael across the world of the web. His stuff has gone viral, and his takes here are so clean and terrific, and I love that you visit with us. Thank you again, Michael Shure. Good weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, pal. Michael Shure, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.